So after the story of the Tower of Babel, Genesis goes from the big picture of the whole world and zooms in onto one family. Now, we're going to meet the father of that family today. We're going to meet Abraham. And Abraham's story is humongous and it's really important. So we're going to do a flyover version of it and we're going to hit the main points. But if you want to dig deeper and if you want to read all of Abraham's story, it goes from the end of Genesis 11 all the way to Genesis 25. Now, Pastor Richard has also been doing a sermon series recently on Abraham's story that's really good. If you like this stuff and you want to learn more about it, check it out. It's here on our YouTube page, and I'll put a link in the video description below. Now, the final thing before we jump into this is remember, we're doing a flyover version of Abraham's life, and the part of the story that we're talking about today covers 25 years. So I'll try to put little pauses in between sections of the story, but remember, if one part of the story doesn't seem to really totally go right after the other, there's usually a few years in between. Okay, without further ado, let's meet Abraham. The Lord had said to Abram, "Go from your country, your people, and your father's family. Go to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great. You'll be a blessing to others. I will bless those who bless you. I will put a curse on anyone who puts a curse on you. All nations on earth will be blessed because of you." So Abram went, just as the Lord had told him. Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he left Haran. He took his wife Sarai and his nephew Lot. They started out for the land of Canaan, and they arrived there. Abram traveled through the land. He went as far as the large tree of Moreh at Shechem. The Lord appeared to Abram at Shechem. He said, "I will give this land to your family who comes after you." So Abram built an altar there to honor the Lord who had appeared to him. At that time there was not enough food in the land, so Abram went down to Egypt to live there for a while. As he was about to enter Egypt, he spoke to his wife Sarai. He said, "I know what a beautiful woman you are. The people of Egypt will see you and say, 'This is his wife.' Then they will kill me, but they will let you live. Tell them you're my sister. Then I'll be treated well and my life will be spared because of you." Abram arrived in Egypt, and the Egyptians saw that Sarai was a very beautiful woman. When Pharaoh's officials saw her, they told Pharaoh how beautiful she was. So she was taken into his palace. Pharaoh treated Abram well because of her. So Abram gained more sheep and cattle and male and female donkeys. He also gained more male and female servants and some camels. But the Lord sent terrible sickness on Pharaoh and everyone in his palace. The Lord did it because of Abram's wife Sarai. So Pharaoh sent for Abram. "What have you done to me?" he said. "Why didn't you tell me she was your wife? Why did you say she was your sister? That's why I took her to be my wife. Now then, here's your wife. Take her and go." Then Pharaoh gave orders to his men about Abram. They sent him on his way. So he left with his wife and everything he had. The Lord spoke to Abram after Lot had left him. He said, "Look around from where you are. Look north and south, east and west. I will give you all the land you see. I will give it forever to you and your family who comes after you. I will make them like the dust of the earth. Can dust be counted? If it can, then your family can be counted. Go, walk through the land. See how long and wide it is. I'm giving it to you." Sometime later, Abram had a vision. The Lord said to him, "Abram, do not be afraid. I am like a shield to you. I'm your very great reward." But Abram said, "Lord and King, what can you give me? I still don't have any children. When I die, my servant will get everything I own." Then a message from the Lord came to Abram. The Lord said, "When you die, what you have will not go to this man. You will have a son of your own. He will get everything you have." The Lord took Abram outside and said, "Look up at the sky. Count the stars if you can." Then he said to him, "That's how many children will be born into your family." Abram believed the Lord. The Lord was pleased with Abram because he believed. So Abram's faith made him right with the Lord. Abram's wife Sarai had never had any children by him, but she had a female slave from Egypt named Hagar. So she said to Abram, "The Lord has kept me from having children. Go and sleep with my slave. Maybe I can have a family through her." Abram agreed to what Sarai had said. So Hagar had a son by Abram, and Abram gave him the name Ishmael. Abram was 86 years old when Hagar had Ishmael by him. When Abram was 99 years old, the Lord appeared to him. He said, "I am the mighty God. Walk faithfully with me. Live in a way that pleases me. I will now act on my covenant between me and you. I will greatly increase the number of children after you." Abram fell with his face to the ground. God said to him, "This is my covenant with you. You will be the father of many nations. You will not be called Abram anymore. Your name will be Abraham, because I have made you a father of many nations. I will greatly increase the number of children after you. Nations and kings will come from you. I will make my covenant with you last forever. It will be between me and you and your family after you for all time to come. I will be your God, and I will be the God of all your family after you. You are now living in Canaan as an outsider, but I will give you the whole land of Canaan. You will own it forever, and so will all your family after you, and I will be their God." God also said to Abraham, "Do not continue to call your wife by the name Sarai. Her name will be Sarah. I will give her my blessing. You can be sure that I will give you a son by her. I will bless her so that she will be the mother of nations. Kings of nations will come from her." Abram fell with his face to the ground. He laughed and said to himself, "Can a 100-year-old man have a son? Can Sarah have a child at the age of 90? Abram said to God, "I really wish Ishmael could receive your blessing." Then God said, "Yes, I will bless Ishmael, but your wife Sarah will have a son by you, and you will name him Isaac. I will establish my covenant with him. The covenant will last forever. It will be for Isaac and his family after him. I have heard what you said about Ishmael. I will surely bless him, but I will establish my covenant with Isaac. By this time next year, Sarah will have a son by you." When God had finished speaking with Abraham, God left him. The Lord appeared to Abraham near the large trees of Mamre. Abram was sitting at the entrance to his tent. It was the hottest time of the day. Abram looked up and saw 3 men standing nearby. So he quickly left the entrance to his tent to greet them. He bowed low to the ground. "Where is your wife Sarah?" they asked him. "Over there in the tent," he said. Then one of them said, "I will surely return to you about this time next year. Your wife Sarah will have a son." Sarah was listening at the entrance to the tent, which was behind him. Abraham and Sarah were already very old. Sarah was too old to have a baby. So she laughed to herself. She thought, "I'm worn out and my husband is old. Can I really know the joy of having a baby?" Then the Lord said to Abraham, "Why did Sarah laugh? Why did she say, 'Will I really have a baby now that I'm old?' Is anything too hard for me? I will return to you at the appointed time next year. Sarah will have a son." Sarah was afraid, so she lied and said, "I didn't laugh." But the Lord said, "Yes, you laughed." The Lord was gracious to Sarah, just as he said he would be. The Lord did for Sarah what he had promised to do. Sarah became pregnant. She had a son by Abraham when he was old. The child was born at the exact time God had promised. Abraham gave the name Isaac to the son Sarah had by him. When his son Isaac was 8 days old, Abraham circumcised him. He did it exactly as God had commanded him. Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him. Sarah said, "God has given laughter to me. Everyone who hears about this will laugh with me." She also said, "Who would have said to Abraham that Sarah would breastfeed children? But I've had a son by him when he is old." Okay, so that was a lot. Thank you for sticking with me. Now, as the story starts, God makes a promise to Abraham, and then Abraham follows God. Abraham was going to move to this new place that God was going to show him. And when he left, he didn't know that he was going to be moving 450 miles on foot. And what's more, when Abraham left, he didn't know this new place that he was going to. He didn't know that it was going to be a place where people spoke a different language. He didn't know that it was going to be a place where he didn't know anybody. I'm sure Abraham was all set up back in his old home, and he was probably comfortable. And what's more, Abraham was 75 years old when he left everything that he knew and followed God. Abraham didn't know what to expect, but he trusted God, and he followed. And it's that trust part, it's that faith that mattered. It says in the Bible that it was Abraham's trust in God, his faith in God, that made him right with God. That's what mattered to God. Now, really simply, for us as Christians, that's all that's asked of us too. Just to trust God. So God actually made a few promises. And the first one was about the land. God was going to give this wonderful land to Abraham and his family, and it was going to be theirs forever. Great promise, right? But when Abraham got there, there was no food. So it certainly doesn't seem like Abraham totally trusted God when he decided, let's go down to Egypt. And when Abraham was in Egypt, he certainly did some things that made it seem like he wasn't totally trusting in God either. But even with all of that, even with Abraham's bad choices and not totally trusting God, God kept repeating his promise to Abraham over and over again. Now, the next promise was that Abraham was going to have a family so big that it would be like trying to count the stars in the sky or the dust on the ground. Now, to have a family that big, you need to have at least one kid, right? And Abraham and Sarah didn't have any. What's more is they were way too old to have kids. But again, Abraham tried to take matters into his own hands, and he did have a son, but not with his wife. And that's not at all what God meant. But God repeated his promise. God repeated the promise that Abraham was going to have a big family, and that family was going to be through a son that Sarah had. And we got to see that promise come true today. Now, the final part of the promise was that Abraham's family was going to be a blessing to the whole rest of the world. To see how that works out, though, we're going to have to keep reading through the rest of the story of the Bible. So these promises are super important. They're going to come up again and again. It's going to be central to the rest of the story of the Old Testament. Now, before we leave, there's definitely some things that we learn about God. And there's two things in particular that I want to talk about today. First is that trusting God is the most important part. We see right here in Genesis that it's having faith, it's having trust in God that makes us right with Him. Now, the second part is that even when we aren't faithful, even when we don't really trust God, even when we mess up, even when we go the wrong way, God still keeps His promises.